The National Prosecuting Authority has confirmed that it will not prosecute a case of rape that was presented to prosecutors in Matatiele Magistrate's Court in November last year. NPA spokesperson Advocate Mthunzi Mhaga says the docket contained information with suspicions of sexual assault on a minor girl. He says the prosecutors assessed the contents and conducted an interview with the minor girl. Mhaga joins me now to take that conversation forward. Good afternoon, Mthunzi. Thank you for your time. Tell us, what is the status of the case as we speak this afternoon? It's a case that came to national attention with calls for justice for that minor child in Matatiele. But you've come to a certain conclusion. Where does it leave the investigation and the considerations of a possible prosecution?
Good afternoon to us and good afternoon to your viewers. And thanks for having us in your show. It's our first time to be here. To us, the status of the matter is twofold. One, there is a decision taken by the prosecutors in November that we have communicated about, which was ratified or confirmed by the Director of Public Prosecutions in the Eastern Cape. And after which this year the police resubmitted the docket. Now, there has not been a thorough assessment of whatever is contained in the docket that has been resubmitted. So we don't know what is contained therein. So the status is that investigations are continuing, but a decision that was taken last year in November still stands until there is a situation that warrants a reconsideration of that.
Mthunzi, there are two words that I see in your statement. You talk about insufficient evidence upon which a successful prosecution could be instituted. And then further down, you talk about no conclusive evidence that could be found of a rape having occurred. Clarify insufficient evidence upon which a successful prosecution versus conclusive evidence of a rape having occurred.
There are two things. One, when you take a prosecutorial decision, you look at whether there is relevant and admissible evidence sufficient enough to place the matter on the roll and institute prosecution. Now, in respect of this one, the docket came to the prosecutors in November. They interviewed the minor girl. Experts, including doctors, forensic social worker, examined the girl, and no evidence could be found that pointed to rape or sexual assault. This then resulted in the prosecutors, when assessing the evidence in the docket, not finding evidence of the commission of the crime as alleged. Two, no suspects implicated by any evidence in the police docket, and therefore came to a conclusion that a prosecutorial decision not to prosecute should be taken.
That in addition to that work that was done by the teams that you are talking about, including the experts and the examination of the child, are you able to say that any other evidence that did not emanate from your own work, including possible examinations of the child by other doctors, private doctors and the likes, because at the time when this story came to light, there was talk about the child having been examined by at least one doctor outside of your system. Was that taken into account?
Every evidence that was placed before the prosecutors at the time was considered. Unfortunately, in sexual violence cases or alleged sexual violence cases, that's the kind of a detail that we don't elaborate on in the media for obvious reasons, especially when it involves a minor girl.
Yeah. Then there's a part, Mthunzi, just as a last aspect on this conversation, there's a part further down in your statement where you say, you don't normally communicate. At that time, it wasn't communicated when the prosecutorial decision was taken at the Matatiele level as well as the Eastern Cape level. Then you say, however, in view of the public outcry and interest generated since the matter resurfaced in April 2025, The NPA has decided to communicate the decision. So you then say, this is the part that I want to get to. We can also indicate that the police have since resubmitted the docket to the DPP's office for further consideration. What is this further consideration then, in light of what you just told me in the last few minutes?
It is the fact that the matter, when it comes to investigation, was never stopped. That means the investigation never stopped. That's the indication we got from law enforcement. That's why they have now since resubmitted the docket.
All right. I want to bring in another aspect very quickly, Mthunzi, taking advantage of the fact that I have you on the line. We saw the conclusion of the criminal trial of Moses Gqesha out in the Eastern Cape earlier on in the week in relation to the 2010 rape and kidnapping case of the businesswoman Andy Kawa. This was a case that initially was botched quite royally by the police, at least, in terms of how it was investigated. And it has taken quite a long time to get to the point where there's justice, including the sentencing of the suspect in that matter. As the NPA, what's your position around how this case and the difficulty that the survivor of that incident had to go through to get justice? What does it communicate to other victims out there that, you know, would be expected or would want to report a rape?
It gives us hope, and it is a reflection of how resolute we are in ensuring that victims are protected by making sure that when there is evidence that is relevant and admissible, we effectively prosecute successfully those cases. We are therefore appealing to victims of domestic violence, sexual violence, gender-based violence, to not lose hope in us, knowing that, as we demonstrated in the case of Miss Andy Kawa, that even though the system can be quite protracted, but when we rely on evidence of forensic nature, it is always challenging, and therefore the prosecuting authority and the prosecution team should be commended that at last there is a conviction and a life sentence.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this afternoon. That is Advocate Mthunzi Mhaga, who speaks on behalf of the National Prosecuting Authority.